to draw the conclusions, and this is the problem, I suppose, that people are inferring an awful lot from kind of circumstantial or innuendo or what seems, stuff that looks suspicious, seems suspicious in the context of Jeffrey Epstein having, being a pretty nasty guy, and pretty someone who was clearly involved, prosecuted for child sex abuse, let's say, or underage sex abuse, let's say, and obviously grooming in one way or another, grooming girls. So grooming's a difficult kind of thing, because how do you, maybe there are laws that, definitely if they're underage, then you're in trouble, but even then, if there's no actual, abuse, having a kind of wayward 16 or 17-year-old girl come to your house and give you massages for which you pay her, it's difficult to to draw any major or to prosecute someone in any serious way for that. You know what I mean? You can't prosecute them probably under some law or other, but unless you've got hard evidence of the more nefarious things that people are all assuming is happening, then you're not going to get. It's not going to be a slam dunk. You're not going to get any big revelation or big exposure of. So basically, it's all innuendo and suggestive of something, and there's no. The frustrating thing is that there's no hard evidence for any of it.
The worst one that I remember coming across recently was, I think Epstein was asking somebody what gynecologist they used in New York, and I'm pretty sure it was Epstein who said that he remembers the gynecologist saying that the person he's requesting the name from, single-handedly kept him in business.
This is it here, actually. Uh, 2012 email from Epstein to redacted. Do you remember the name of the gynecologist that you used to send your victims to? Redacted says New York. Epstein says yes. Many years ago, you used to send them to a gyno in New York who once commented something to the effect that you were keeping him in business single-handedly. Again, there's the frame or the. There's an email address there, though. It's kind of funny. They redacted it in black above, but then in the kind of the data or in the line, the tagline, or whatever, the date, it's got ismo@mindspring.com is the actual email address being sent to Epstein. Do you remember the name of the gynecologist you used to send your victims to? What does that even mean? Obviously, victims is a kind of very provocative term, right? And in the context, it fits. People are going to run with that, but again, there's a problem. These are all isolated emails, for the most part, without any context. It's a part of an email chain, most likely, because it's like, there's a good example where there was a response to that email, but it's not included.
Yeah,
a response from Epstein to this guy's suggesting, the guy in New York, Again, this implies who's this person. And again, nobody's ever been able to find out who Ismo Mindspring is. So
I think they did. There's still a professor. Or still has a position.
Oh yeah,
I think they doxed him, so to speak. I don't have it, but I think he was. Name was but email address and name was but a face. what's happened to him. I don't know, but look, the association is enough. It's not just happening on X. Obviously, it must having effects in the real world, because like his
it was actually his brother.
His brother was the gyno.
No, Ismo.
Okay.
No, the gyno was just been referred to. The emails were between Ismo. So that was an email between Mark Epstein and Jeffrey Epstein. And so Mark Epstein refers to used to send your victims to. Do you remember the name of the gynecologist you used to send your victims to? So that's all in the family, right, or whatever. But again, that's the annoying thing. Is all of this is out of context, innuendo, and the whole thing just strikes me as being kind of a manipulation. Either there's a few different possibilities in terms of what's actually going on here, but one is that Pam Bondi, etc., being a noob, and the Trump administration kind of washing their hands of the whole thing to a large extent, don't have access to. These are the only emails that they have, or they're creating them, whatever, going through them, and removing, looking at emails, and if there's nothing to it, they're redacting names, they're throwing out information that looks like it's suggestive, and maybe that's because that's all they have, because again, my problem is that, like, with the idea that Pam Bondi was up there and she was stonewalling everybody because she's got all the information, and she's not releasing the files, and they're all part of it and all that kind of stuff. That implies that Pam Bondi is front and center in this whole conspiracy, right?
Yeah.
That she's the one who was, she is like some way directly involved or invested or has skin in the game of the whole Epstein operation, going back a long time, and that she personally and maybe other members of the Justice Department have access to seriously incriminating information against all sorts of people with, involved in all sorts of evil, child abuse, up to and including satanic, eating of children and all that kind of stuff, right? And she's sitting on it because she is she's involved in it, essentially. It seems to me that this whole kind of operation goes way beyond people like Pam Bondi and any new Justice Department administration, that you don't walk into power in DC, even if it's your second term after a break or whatever. But a lot of new faces. You don't just walk in there and get access to all the holiest of holies.
Yeah.
In the same way, you don't walk into the CIA as a new CIA director, especially if you're someone who's just come out of civil life or whatever, have no history in politics, no history in the CIA, and Trump decides to, do you a favor and say, hey, you can be CIA director you can be my CIA director. You walk into the CIA and say, okay, give me all the files.
I'm the director now.
I'm the director and I get to see all the files. Show me all the files on Area 51 and all of Epstein and all the satanic ritual abuse. I want to see Bohemian Grove. I want to see JFK. I want to see the whole lot. Bring it all out here. Just drop them on my table. I'm the CIA director. I get to make the decisions. So I don't think that's how it works, because, but it doesn't work. It's very unlikely to work that way if you posit the idea of a deep state and unelected permanent bureaucracy behind the scenes that has been runs things, in between different administrations. Different administrations come and go, but you've got this permanent bureaucracy, deep state, that kind of run things. And it's more likely that those kind of people, long-term civil servant type people or bureaucrats, it's probably a nested hierarchy. That's the deep state, whatever way you want to describe the deep state. But it's those people who would have more access and would have developed kind of ramified networks or a hierarchy, that would be privy to a lot of this, incriminating information. Because ultimately, it's those people who are tasked with keeping the country on an even keel, and running the country between administrations, and as administrations come and go, they're the ones behind the scene. So they would have more of a vested interest in keeping information on the wraps. They have their watchword is national security, and they span into the intel agencies and all that kind of stuff. So an administration that comes and goes from nowhere to nowhere for 4 years, which has happened if it's just one term. And you have a bunch of newbies who get shunted into different positions. Like, yeah, you're not really very important. You know what I mean? You're here for 4 years. You just came out of nowhere. You're here for 4 years. You're going to try and get access to stuff. You're going to try and do stuff. You have power to do certain things, but you don't have power to upend the country. Like, you know what I mean? You're not upending the way we've been running the show from the point of view of the deep state for a long time. Because in 4 years you'll be gone. You'll be a footnote in history. So,
if you last 4 years,
if you do that, if you push too far, you might not even last 4 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Or even if you don't even last 4 years in an administration, which is very often the case, where you come in and you're only there for a year or 2 years. I mean, how long is Tulsi Gabbard going to be DNI? She keeps her head down. She might last 4 years, but maybe not.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea that someone like Tulsi Gabbard, for example, this kind of peacenik Hawaiian short-term senator who just comes in under Trump would get access to anything of any significance within the intelligence community is
when they know that the things that they want to do would not make it past her desk. Mm-hmm. Well, why would you then include her?
Of course.
If the things you're trying to do aren't going to make it past her desk. It's like, well, obviously you would circumvent her.
Yeah, just go around her desk.
Exactly.
It's not hard to do, right?
It's not a big desk.
It's not a big desk. She walks in and she has no idea how things work anyway, right?
Yeah.
And she has to. So how do things work around these parts? Well, here's how it works. I mean, people don't realize that when anybody comes into politics, anybody who's a newbie in politics, and most of the people in the Trump administration are relative newbies, at least in the inner workings of Washington, D.C. On the first day they walk in and they have to go, so
how does this work?
How does it work around here? I mean, you're wide open to being told, well, you see, this is how it works. Mm-hmm. You ask me for stuff, and then I'll tell you whether or not that's possible to get it. So,
do you think Thomas Massie, Ro Khanna, and the bipartisan effort to, create all the Epstein Transparency Files Act and what he's still pushing for, he's got caught a tiger by the tail. It was always only going to be what it is. Cooked, curated, innuendo, suggestive. So he's like, get this public, and that's why the resistance from the Trump side. People assume then Trump's either one himself or he's protecting his friends who are PDF files, and that's the unconscious thing that's now expressed. Everyone's running with it. But the actual battle was more, Trump took a hard line last summer, Democrat hoax. It was a bit ham-fisted in his attempt to brush it off. But his reasoning for brushing it off is sound. Mm-hmm. So, like, people don't understand this will lead to just chaos.
For my administration.
Yeah. It won't lead to prosecutions because I can't.
I don't have any information.
Don't have the information. Never mind. But if it was on my desk, but we could do anything about it. So that's the unspoken tension, most vehemently seen in that exchange this week. But it's actually been back and forth for a year now, and the attack on Massie from Trump. And she kind of reiterated, we heard her there, you're a has-been, and she goes on and she says other things like about Massie being, such a TDS, Trump derangement syndrome. But it's not, and people are misinterpreting that. Maybe Americans in the heat of it are reading that as, oh my God, that's how far Trump has gone from us. Massie is the original us, MAGA. And he's staying true to MAGA. And Trump, and Bondi, etc., they just completely those who now doubt the hardcore MAGA maybe are still over there with Trump. Mm-hmm. So that division in itself is the fruits of it are what the strategic purpose, if there was one running through all this, what we see is what was intended to happen. You split MAGA, basically. And they're actually all MAGA ideologically. They're definitely all. I mean, Massie himself was to keep saying in his own defense, hang on, 95% of the time I vote with the GOP caucus. Stop trying to cast me as a rhino here or as anti-Trump. That's ridiculous. But Trump and Team Trump runs with that because they're trying to say to Massie, will you shut up? Because where this goes isn't where you think in your principles it's going to lead to.
Well, it's not probably not black and white, like Massie is, has every right to push for this and to, he's obviously staking out his own political life is under threat. His political position is under threat because he's taken a principled stand from the outside to a large extent, because I'd say he is mostly an outsider, and he gets the scraps that he's able to get, and he jumps on the Epstein thing because he sees it an opportunity to to gain, I suppose, keep his hand in and to curry some favour amongst the the people, so that in the midterms he doesn't get booted out, which Trump would like him to, so there's obviously personal interest in Massie going for this as well.
It's a bit cynical.
Yeah, well, you see, that's the thing, I mean, if you're too idealistic about the whole thing, and you're, that's essentially a kind of a naivety, to think to not it's a kind of naivety, or it's just a lack of, I suppose, a lack of, perspective on the bigger picture, you know what I mean, and allowing for certain things like personal motivation, you know what I mean. Two things can be true at once. Massie can be personally motivated for his own personal interest to maintain his position and to continue to be a congressman and so he can continue to do good things as he sees it, and at the same time think that this is an issue that really needs to be brought up, and he's quite personally horrified by it, let's say, to the extent that he's aware of. I don't think he's aware of much more than anybody else on X is who's been paying attention. But so he's running with that because it's something he can essentially campaign on. He's essentially campaigning for a second term, because he is faced with, because if he gets booted out in the midterms next year, it'll probably be the end of him. Like, you won't hear from him again, Yeah. So there has to be a certain level of personal interest in staying in power for anybody who thinks that only from a position of influence and power, like to the extent that being a member of Congress is a position of influence and power, some influence and power, but only within that position can I actually do anything good for the people. If I have a self-appointed mandate of trying to expose the truth, or expose corrupt government to the public, well, I'm not going to be very effective at doing that just by creating a Twitter account. And you know what I mean? If I'm a nobody, I have to be a somebody. Yeah. So he would obviously, but the two kind of converge there in a certain sense, where he can fulfill his or he can follow his motivation to expose evil doing in the halls of power to the people, and at the same time use that as a way to hopefully continue to get reelected.
Well, it's like this as an example of a hill to die on. I mean, it's arguably a hill worth dying on. Yeah. It's like there's a bunch of people. There's enough smoke here that I think another reason for a lot of people basically going crazy with this is because there's a lot of unanswered questions, and it doesn't seem that anyone in power is asking the questions. And that's one of the reasons why people are so mad. And it's a similar thing with the 2020 election, where there's a shit ton of things that are going on that we can see that aren't being discussed or mentioned or addressed, and no one in power is asking questions when they should be asking these questions. And it's a similar thing with the Epstein Files. There's a lot of things going on that deserve answers because there are questions there, and no one's doing it. And so he's like, if there are actually these, billionaires, politicians, etc., who are pedophilic, who are cannibalistic pedophiles or whatever, like if that's what's actually going on and that's how corrupt our system is and that's where we're at, then
it needs to be exposed.
It needs to be exposed.
People, so that it can be stopped, if that's what's happening. But then again, there's only hints or suggestions that kind of thing might be going reference the word, pizza and jerky, and then you have a Pizzagate from several years ago and all that kind of stuff, and the allegations around that, and then other circumstantial evidence that hinted again at like the Podestas and stuff, and what do you call them, Maria Abramovich, whatever her name is, or something, Marina Abramovich, the kind of shit that they get up to. It's all very suggestive of these people being quite depraved. The pictures they hang on the walls and all that kind of stuff. It's all very suggestive, but it's not something. You can't drag John Podesta out and throw him in front of a court and then throw him in prison for having creepy pictures of children on his wall in his living room.
Maybe we should.
You should be able to, but in a normal society, that person would be shunned. But officially under the laws, you can't do that. So that's all you get. And then says, well, people go, well, look, there's nothing to prosecute. You must prosecute him for painting on his wall. And like Thomas Massie's motivation is actually interesting in the context of Trump's motivation. Like Trump is probably doing the same, is taking the same tack essentially, just from a different perspective, because Trump, while Thomas Massie is fighting for his political survival so he can continue to do what he sees to be the right thing, it seems to me that Trump has the same agenda, and that's why he's pushing back against this whole Epstein business, because he, justifiably seems to see it as a rehash of his first the events that went on in his first term, where the quote unquote deep state, or the Dems, or whatever way you want to characterize them, attempted to hobble his first term or prevent him from doing anything significant or useful, as he saw, in his first term, by the whole Russiagate business and the rape accusations and that kind of stuff, the Mueller investigation, Russiagate. So we saw them do that in his first term, and then in the very first year of his second term, with Biden in between, he sees the Epstein business being dumped out. So of course he's the one. He's asked, "Will you?" Again, you have to kind of question it. Who first brought up like Epstein died 2019? Who decided to bring it up in 2026? Who decided to release him in 2026? Who brought it up to Trump? Who pushed for Trump? Who pushed the Epstein and his dealings and all that kind of stuff?
Trump.
Who pushed it to Trump? No, he didn't bring it up himself. Who pushed it to him and suggested it to him as something? Because people asked, if you get to be president, will you release? I think I'd release the Epstein Files. I'd let people have a look at them. Who's that guy who asked the question? Who pushed it to him? He's not the only one, obviously. Who is presenting it to Trump as something that he should and could use as a campaign promise to, transparency and drain the swamp and all that kind of stuff. It all fit with it, so it seemed reasonable to him. Probably not knowing very much about it, as is often the case when he makes those kind of campaign promises. He has no idea what he's talking about, but he says, that sounds like a good idea. Whatever happened to the JFK files? Going to release the JFK files, all the details of the JFK files. Oh, that went away. Release Epstein. We'll do Epstein too. Whatever else. Anybody got any other files you want released? We'll release all the files.
I think
RFK, JFK, MLK.
Well, they released what they said they had.
Well, exactly, but it's not. It's gone. It's nothing. It's a nothing burger, right? So all these promises. We'll do it. We'll do that. We'll do that too, and we'll do those, and we'll do those ones. Yep, whatever you want, release them all. And then when it comes to Epstein, they're like, they released the files. Somebody released the files, or somebody behind the scenes is pushing for the release of the files, or giving them to the Justice Department. Here, release these files. And it turns into a big kind of shitstorm in the first year of Trump's second term. And Trump's response is, this is ridiculous. This is basically, he's like, I'm getting 2016 vibes. I'm getting 2017 vibes. This whole thing is a nothing burger in the sense that it can't, not that there's nothing to it, but we don't have access to files. This isn't going to go anywhere. because there are powerful people behind the scenes who, won't allow this information to come out in the way that people would like it to come out. And you can imagine that would be the case. The kinds of people who would be engaged in decades-long, kind of transgenerational, transnational child trafficking and paedophile networks. They're not the kind of people who just, walk out there and say, "Okay, for cop, go, you got me."
Yeah. Well, the other examples of incidents like that where real investigators who really wanted to do justice by the victims and sought the truth ended up dead.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you wanted to, you can't.
Yeah, and I can totally understand. It's good that people, a lot of people, and again, I don't know how many people are aware of the whole Epstein business. Obviously, if you just focus on X, you're in a bubble, you're in an echo chamber in a certain sense. You think this is the whole world, but it's not. It's probably...
But it's my world.
It's 2% of the American population, let's say, have Twitter accounts that they use actively and stuff. So all these, that's a lot of people still. It's however many million people. So it can seem like a lot, but again, it's good that those people are demanding and having their eyes opened and all that kind of stuff. But the reality is that this kind of, the kind of information that they suspect is there and is going on is not the kind of information that ever gets revealed, because it would bring the government down. It would bring the country down. It would create this massive scandal. It's just simply, it's not going to happen. This kind of thing has been going on for a very long time. And like you said, anybody who got too close got suicided as a result. And it has happened, as we've mentioned in previous shows, it's happened. There have been scandals in different countries, particularly in Europe and in the US over the years, that again hinted at this. So it's not really anything new. Except that this Epstein business, it does seem to be broader in scope, and also because it points to Israel, right? Which is a kind of a hot topic, because there's been quite a lot of stuff going on of late about the question of Israel first or America first, and shade being thrown at Israel, and then suddenly it comes, for whatever reason, comes to public attention that Epstein, this guy Epstein, remember him? Yeah, what was he all about? Oh, he worked for Israel? Oh, was he blackmailing our government? Oh, so it ties into that, so it can gain a lot of traction in that respect, So the point is that it's not that there isn't any truth behind all of this, it's just that there is, that truth has not been revealed and will not be revealed. So any questions as to why such and such a member of the Trump administration or the Justice Department, or whatever, is not prosecuting anybody or not, revealing any information, is most likely, I think, because they don't have that information. Or there is maybe a bit more information that they have, but that there's a certain line that they cannot cross because they realize that it would bring down the government. People don't realize that, hard evidence of the reality of an elite political and business, high-level business and political, long-term paedophile network amongst the people who effectively run the country. Obviously, that would, if that was revealed, that would bring down the government and a lot of else along with it. So, who's in government right now? Which government would be brought down?
Trump's.
Oh, okay. So let's bring down our own government. Yeah.
The one that...
Let's all have a meeting and decide whether or not...
The one that everyone fought to have.
This thing that clearly, if it goes where people think it goes, has clear, has clear potential to bring down the government. Let's reveal that information. Oh, just point of order. That would be the government that would collapse. That's us. Just FYI. Okay. Thanks for that point of order. We'll carry on with releasing the Epstein documents. Wow. And bring down ourselves. Let's bring ourselves down. And then go, that's weird. We have all these people that are our supporters clamoring to release files that would ultimately bring down our government, us. How do we get here again?
So
did we end up? Did we decide this? How did we? Did we maybe make the decision to do this? How do we end up in this situation?
The music stops and we end up being the ones without the chair.
Holding the baby.
I like the way you're asking the question of why now? Because when I was traveling recently and saw some people's phones, and these were non-English speakers, and on their phones when there's Epstein related things and not in English,
right?
So it was obvious to me. It's like, okay, well, this wasn't just one or two people. This was like a bunch of people, and this was quite a few languages, and it's all getting pushed out everywhere, which makes you think, hold on, is this like one of those things where the media disseminates the thing to get the reaction that is desired so that something else can happen? Because it's like the response to COVID, where I think it was in emails in the UK, it was revealed, or there were leaks that the UK government basically just did what they thought the people wanted them to do.
Sort of.
Sort of. But
it was worse than that.
Yeah.
They well, I mean, there's, again, it's kind of circumstantial evidence. COVID's a good example because it's the kind of thing we never get hard evidence, but there's a lot of, suggestion that there was something quite nefarious going on here. But like, at least in the UK and particularly in the UK, but in Europe in general, I think Bolsonaro, who said it, was closest to the mark. We said they got a taste of authoritarianism, or of total control, and they liked it. So they ran with it, Anyway, go ahead.
No, yeah. So the idea that I had in my mind was that, maybe you could say that to an extent, that the government was appealing to the people, and you need that in order to, especially if it's something that people wouldn't normally go along with. You need them to want it in order for you to be able to do it, because otherwise they're not going to want it, obviously. So then how do you do that? And you do that by manipulation in order to get them into the right frame of mind to be asking for things they wouldn't normally,
right,
and otherwise normal circumstances, ask for. So my question that I put to the floor is, what are they clamoring for that they wouldn't otherwise normally clamor for? The takedown of the Trump government?
Yeah. Bring it all down, or discrediting government
in general?
In general. A chipping away at the credibility of government in general, global, but particularly, let's say, in the US, because it's centered on the US. And it's kind of like a demoralization in a certain sense amongst, it has a demoralizing effect on the population, where they feel like, look, there's not all of them, but certainly it looks to us from the, suggestions and intimations in these emails and just the context and the background around it and all that kind of stuff, is that there are some fairly devious and depraved people in positions of power, but they're, almost by definition, goes with the territory, I suppose, given that they're in positions of significant power, and this seems to go beyond the government, that there's nothing we can do about it. We get told that these are evil, depraved people ruling over us, but that comes with the territory of you're not getting your day in court.
Yeah, we discussed this last week. So the idea is that this is acclimatizing people to accept that this is how it is. So get them to themselves articulate their worst fears about it, even encourage it. So that we meet up at Bohemian Grove every summer, for example. So what are you going to do about it? Longer term, more specific to Israel, is it's like a time bomb went off. The time bomb generally has gone off at a time when Israel is going max in the Middle East, and it needs a wall of compliance. especially from the West, its main source of funding, arms, and other support. So, as Joe put it, you put people on notice with the suggestion that you could all be fired, prosecuted, your government could fall, or worse. You don't actually execute on that, but everyone's on notice at a time when you're going max with crimes that ordinarily would be, war crimes and have serious implications.
That's it. I mean, I suppose there's three aspects to it. One is the great and the good, the Bill Gates, God forbid, and all those kinds of people, politicians, business people, celebrities, scientists, all that kind of stuff. Get as much information as possible. This goes back a long time. This is what the Epstein network was designed to do. So, like you said, you have all these people on notice and afraid. A kind of chilling effect that you met with Epstein. That's bad enough. We put you in a room with him and took a photo. You don't want that photo, you know what I mean? So, and then obviously there's pressure on politicians as well, because that even more so, because they're all aware that not that all of the politicians have engaged in anything untoward or whatever, but I'd say this isn't just, people focus too much on the child abuse or the paedophilia and all that kind of stuff, but like a blackmail operation runs the gamut of, the whole spectrum of potential blackmail information, right? However small, So
from that fraud to money laundering.
Yeah. And I mean, so it's kind of top tier kind of blackmailing in certain types, because vanilla blackmailing that goes on all the time, especially in the part of the different lobbies, including the Israel lobby, is just handing money to politicians, financing politicians' campaigns and stuff, So, so there's that, and then obviously the Trump administration is no stranger to that. And again, there's people behind the scenes who are able to hand down orders and put pressure on these blow-ins, basically. So all members, including Pam Bondi, all members of the Trump administration are well aware that there's a higher power than all of them, and they better toe the line, or else, But also in that respect, this Epstein business, like I said, conveniently coming in the first year of Trump's second term, putting a lot of pressure on the Trump government with threats to out. Because, if the whole thing was revealed, it would bring down any government. It could bring down the country. It could bring down all the institutions. Let's say it would be mass chaos, or who knows what would happen, but it would be a serious discrediting of the entire political class, entire political system. But so obviously, if that happened now, that would bring down the Trump government, because that's the government that's in power. But there's, again, it's interesting to see people like Howard Lutnick being outed in these emails. Why was he included? I mean, again, we don't know the provenance of all these emails, but certainly someone had access to all of Epstein's information, let's say, blackmail information and all of his personal information, because he was working essentially for Israeli/deep state intelligence. So these emails that have been passed down to the Justice Department, or have been that the Justice Department have been allowed to get access to, include emails between Epstein and Howard Lutnick, who is U.S. Treasury Secretary. No, U.S.
Commerce
Secretary. So there's been calls for his resignation because of the extent of his, as revealed in the emails, the extent of his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. One example of how you can put pressure on the Trump administration by just signaling there's one guy. How about that Besant fella? You like him, Treasury Secretary? We might have an email or two that we haven't released between Epstein and Jeff and Besant. And we probably have more stuff on RFK Jr. too. Probably release something about him. Who else?
Tulsi Gabbard.
Pete Hegseth. Definitely have stuff on Pete Hegseth.
We do have the provenance of one of the body of his Gmail account, JEE-vacation at gmail.com. The French media explained that this week, that the French Justice Department had the whole lot from July 2019 because they accessed it and downloaded or stored his Gmail account in their raid in Paris. So the main corpus of at least of that email account from his end, that's where that comes from. And they sat on it for 6 years. Well, officially they sat on it for 6 years, but at some point that was that migrated to DOJ in the US. So
well, they probably had access.
I don't know when.
I don't even know if migrated. I'd say the DOJ had access to it themselves, you know, if it's just Gmail, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, the point being, you know, it's obviously in the broad strokes, it obviously, this whole situation over the past, it's going on for, well, not exactly a year now, but at least 6 months or so, fairly intensely, is that it put serious pressure on Trump and on the Trump administration, as is seen by Trump, in particular his own personal response to the whole thing, which is, well, we even talked about this, shut up. You know, are y'all too stupid to realize that this is just this is something that's designed to prevent me from doing what you all voted for me to do? Are y'all too stupid? That seems to be his attitude to it. Although he doesn't say it explicitly like that, but that seems to be what he's getting at. He's very dismissive of it and dismissive of people who are pushing it, particularly Thomas Massie. But he'd be dismissive of everybody and anybody who's still, you know, all of his base basically, who are giving it any credence. And again, that's not to say he can't talk about it, but that's not to say that he's saying that there's nothing to it. But like I said, he's basically, if you read between the lines and if you think about it for a minute, he's probably saying, look, this doesn't go anywhere. You're not getting any information. First of all, either we don't have information, the information that you want, we don't have it, right? Because remember what this is about. This is an Israeli blackmail operation. Do you think the Israelis have sent me personally all of Jeffrey emails, corpus of material that he collected over the past 40 years? Do you think I have that? You think the Mossad sent me all of that? You think I have it on my desk and that I passed it on to Pam Bondi and that she has it all, a stack of files, video files, everything? You think she has all that? You think they sent it to me? Because if you do, you think that I was part of the network then. You're basically saying that I was part of the network. I was part of this 40-year-long Israeli Epstein blackmail operation that was collecting information on everybody and anybody, including people like me. I was right at the center of it. That's why, because obviously for me to have all that information, I would have had to been a key figure in it.
Mm-hmm. Which is what a lot of people believe now.
Well, a lot of people are very, very stupid. That Trump was involved in it for 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
Trump's a Mossad agent, basically.
He's so close, he's married into it. Kushner, 666 Madison Avenue. I mean, the guy is wedded to it, which isn't fair, because that's only what the surface appearance. There's still context, there's still intentions, you know. But
Trump was a complete newbie. Anybody who thinks that Trump was some kind of, I mean, it's just, people have to think about it, right? So if Trump then was, so who are we talking about? People don't, my problem with all of this is nobody defines anything. And that's understandable because it's very hard to define. But you can at least try and come up with a coherent, logically or internally consistent definition if you want to. Obviously, nobody's going to knows how the ramified networks of power actually work and who's who and who's where or whatever. But you can infer some information to at least build a theoretical structure with motivations and intentions that is at least consistent, and then, or at least that when you apply your logic to try and sort out the world based on this structure that you've come up with, that at least try and make it consistent. That it's logical, that it makes sense. But people don't do that. People don't bother. Like that's my problem with the whole thing. That it's all just like blah. It's all just, and okay, people can do that because people have their blinks and all this kind of stuff.
Well,
but there's not.
There are some where Trump is implicated in the maximum sense, but it makes sense structurally. It doesn't make sense about him and his intention and his own ability to have agency. But Whitney Webb, for example, would have, over a course of her two volumes of blackmail about Jeffrey Epstein and the predecessors. She said the number one fixer in New York City before that was a guy called was it Cohen, the New York lawyer, and him and Trump were involved in a lot of things together. Above board probably, but still, like the guy was not. Everyone knew in New York because he was a corrupt lawyer. I mean,
yeah, but he ditched him. Cohen turned against Trump basically. On the Stormy Daniels business, he's the one who doxed him on the Stormy Daniels business.
That's Michael Cohen. No, I'm thinking of someone else. It goes back to the 80s and the late 70s. He was like an Epstein-like fixer. I forget his first name, but that's Michael Cohen. Yeah. Anyway,
the point being that if you put together a kind of a picture of the structure of a deep state / a CIA. Personally, I just go CIA as a general term for US intelligence, not the overt, the behind the scenes US intelligence, and Mossad, which is behind the scenes, or more or less Israeli intelligence. And it's transnational. They both kind of like, they're all working together for some general nefarious plan, whatever. And that these people are ultimately people who are also behind the Epstein business. So if Trump is at the center of that, then how do I explain that when he got into power in 2016, they tried to crucify him? The same people. Doesn't make any sense.
It's odd. It's
very simple.
Yeah.
But that's not rocket science. That's very, very simple for suddenly any theory you would have about Trump being at the center of it to suddenly not make any sense anymore, to fall apart.
It also hurts that Israel is the key part of the deep state. It also hurts that mega theory as well. Because if Trump signals in 2015, I'm going to be the greatest effing president Israel has ever had, and articulates that and then acts out everything he's acted for Israel has been, it seems, most things anyway, awesome. But he still gets all this shit. He still gets Russiagate, and he still gets Epstein-gate.
He can say whatever he wants, but he didn't act out the greatest. And again, when you say Israel, you're talking about deep state Israel, CIA, US, and transnational deep staters. Trump didn't. He didn't do what those people wanted, which is why they went after him. He can say whatever he wants about Israel and symbolically move an embassy from to Jerusalem, whatever. But that's irrelevant. If the line of force of his entire political vision and stuff is no more wars in the Middle East, no more attacking Iran, no more blowing up anything, then you're in trouble. That's bullshit. That's not Israel first. He can say whatever he wants. He can talk about Israel till he's blue in the face. But it all means nothing if what you're really signaling more concretely is that you're going to be a peace president. Peace president is a dead president, and it'll be an Israeli who shoots him. I don't care how many embassies he moves to Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm. Or how many times he asks the Israeli president to pardon Netanyahu.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Doesn't matter because, that's... And I was actually thinking that just before you articulated it, that, he's done a lot of things for Israel, and he's been criticized for it by a bunch of people, calling him a sellout and yada yada. But at the end of the day, he still hasn't actually bombed Iran.
Mm-hmm.
Not in the way that they actually want.
No, not at all. The whole...
Like, they want everything. They want all the aircraft carriers. They want all the planes. They want all the missiles. They want them all to blow Iran into the Stone Age.
Exactly. because you owe us that, because we have that, you should do that for us, and in fact, we have that leverage over you to make you do that, and we're trying to make you do that. But Trump's like he's a bit of an immovable object, as someone once said. Unstoppable force meets the immovable object, but again, it's getting pretty bad, and I think he's on the ropes about this Iran business. He's trying to stall with the Iran business, and obviously Israel is like not frothing in the mouth, but salivating, all over the media. Netanyahu and all his acolytes in American politics and
Lindsey Graham,
social media and all that kind of stuff. All Laura Loomer type people and Mark Levin. Just wetting themselves over the idea of attacking Iran, and Trump's very well, we're going to do a deal, but it'll be bad, and he has to be the strong president. They're gonna it's gonna be the worst day they ever had if they don't do what we want them to do, but we want to have a deal. And it's like every time Netanyahu and Lindsey Graham and Mark Levin hear him say, but we'd really like to do a deal, they're just like, oh, I hate him. But he's under pressure, rock and a hard place. This is him talking just recently about it, and have a listen. It's only short.
Prime Minister, and I've been the best friend to Israel I think that they've ever had. A lot of people say beyond precedents that they've ever had, and we will continue to be. Yes, ma'am.
I was just getting very strong kind of hostage vibes from that one, We're the best president that really they ever had, We're doing everything we possibly can, but those fuckers keep just like
nervously.
They just keep threatening me with and my family or whatever. I mean, I don't know what to do about those people, So
these people are crazy, and they have nukes,
and
much worse.
Yeah. So. Yeah, it's I don't know. That's what's going on with Epstein. It'll probably blow over fairly soon. Something else will come along. It'll have had its day. Because that's ultimately what these things are. It's like there's almost like there's some kind of a law of kind of free will in a certain sense. I kind of thought about that a long time ago. There's some kind of free will law that rules in some sense, where the hardcore reality of what life is, what who rules the world, basically, of how the world actually works, and the people in positions of power and their nature. That is, there's some. I mean, obviously they cover it up themselves, cover up their criminality themselves. But it's almost like even at the point where you'd think that it could all be revealed now, they've done too much criminality and it's leaking out left, right and centre, and there has to be some kind of a big revelation and everybody gets to realise who the man behind the curtain is. It's almost like there's always something that stops that from happening, because there's a lot of people out there who aren't interested or don't want to live in a world like that. Don't want to believe, and it would be too shocking to force that kind of, I'm talking here about having it across the mainstream media, it being officially accepted that paedophile networks run most of the major governments in the world, and they eat babies. There you go. Guardian, BBC, Telegraph, CNN, Washington Times. Yes, confirmed. Everybody, here they are. It's like, not going to happen. And this is again, because I think that's the only reason I can think of as to why that wouldn't happen, is because, first of all, they have a lot of power. Just on a practical level, they have a lot of power to cover it up. But again, if it gets so bad, surely the power that they have, doesn't matter how much power they have, that ultimately it's going to be exposed. You know what I mean? Ultimately, they can't keep a lid on it on that level of corruption and deviancy forever. But for a long time, apparently they can, and they have a lot of power and control because the two go together. You're talking about people who crave power and worship power, basically. Power and control. So they're going to have a lot of power and control to carry out very criminal and evil and perverted acts, but also have the same power, leverage the same power to keep it under wraps. But every time it seems like it should come out, because it's just got so bad, it just seems to it's only hints, strong enough hints, and which is what we're getting on Twitter and on social media, hints to as many people as possible who are open to it that this is actually the nature of it, this is what's going on. But no slam dunk, busted wide open, day in court evidence. And then once that's done, move on.
Yeah.
The people with eyes to see saw. The people with their eyes closed get to keep them closed, and we all move on.
But that's the thing that they call them the 10%. They're not coming back from this.
Who? Yeah,
the ones on social media. That's what I'm saying to you. They don't need any more evidence. They understand that the evidence can't be a slam dunk because of the nature of the structure of power, and they have the power. They really are going with pedophiles from the government. All of them. So there's no going back. They for them, this is disclosure. It's done. Tucker Carlson's going, at the time, Pizzagate, I was like, come on. Seriously? And I dismissed it. Yeah, well, there's layers of the onion, and there's levels of disclosure, and probably another thing is that a lot of people wouldn't be able to handle full disclosure. No. But it'll move on whenever people feel they've got enough out of it or something else takes its place, whatever. But again, the point is that this was what we started the show with, was that there is no hard evidence for any of this. So there's no way that anybody can say, oh, did you see what was just revealed? Because that kind of thing is important, to turn around and say, did you see what was just revealed in the Epstein Files? They're eating babies. Oh, okay, yeah, good. Like, some people, fair enough, and I can understand, if you have enough contextual or circumstantial evidence to back up that idea, then you might just go with that and say, but if someone turns around and says, actually, is there evidence? Is there hard evidence for that? Because surely we're going to see a court case, right? We're going to see someone in jail, right? We're going to see somebody executed for eating babies, right? Not if the baby eaters run the courts. Well, yeah, but that's the premise here, being dangled before everyone. Yeah, but again, and you have to make a choice. The 10% have made their choice. Yeah, they're not going back. We're not bringing them back to the voting booths. Maybe. I don't know. They are sharpening their knives.
Yeah, no, okay. So it's the example of the video recirculating of the model who was outside of a hotel who was screaming, they eat babies. What was her name? Yeah, I can't remember. So when you have instances like this of someone who was, supposed to be with a bunch of these high roller people, and she's screaming, I knew they were sick, but I didn't know they were eating freaking babies. And then you see these emails and the way that things are worded and coded, it's it seems like that's what they're talking about. People just kind of put the two and two together to say, okay, yeah, maybe they were. Yeah. But I mean, again, it's they, and it's obviously there's a lot of jumping to conclusions based on words like jerky and grape soda, whatever, different things, and there's a lot of going on X as well, a lot of interpretation of the context, of the content of these emails or the files that is pretty clear evidence of kind of potential evidence of confirmation bias, where you have a premise, you're looking for anything that matches with, they're all a bunch of pedophiles. Let me read this email. Oh my God, I just saw 17 references to pedophiles in that email. Someone else who doesn't have that looks at it and goes, no, hang on a minute. But people, again, a lot of people don't do that, where they look through it and go, okay, that could actually mean, that could just be a simple email, blah, blah, blah. But there's more and more emails being added to the list of evidence for pedophilia, whatever. But in a lot of them, there's a reasonable explanation for that content that does not relate to pedophilia or anything evil. So the body of evidence that people are building up is partly fictional, it's partly false, I think, and that then would influence the extent to which people would believe that Trump's in on it, or that they're all in on it, or how far the whole conspiracy goes and how bad it is. Because this is probably the most important point you're talking about.
when people talk about they, I know people use they all the time, and they're doing it again because it's so secret and it's such, secret networks of bullshit artists, basically. But it's the extent to which people feel bad about it or feel that this is horrible or terrible or that the whole world is collapsing depends on the extent to which they think this is spread throughout the systems of governance and power in the Western world. If it's a tiny little small clique that is influencing all the other politicians because they have blackmail on them, well then at least we have something to work with there, in the sense that Trump and his administration and maybe most of Congress and most of the Senate and most of the politicians aren't actually evil baby eaters. Sure, they're all a bit corrupt here and there, as is normal in politics, whatever, but they're not that level of evil. And it's only the really evil ones who have set up these kind of Epstein networks over the years, blackmail networks over the years, to gain control of those people. Because those people, they're easily influenced, easily manipulated, just by financial irregularities. So it really is a matter of scope here, and the extent to which you conclude that the system is rotten to the core or not. And that to be able to determine that requires hard evidence, and that's what's lacking.
For an objective assessment
of the extent to which
the system is rotten to the core.
Rules, yes.
Yeah.
The extent to which paedophilia and Satanism and Baal worship is, I don't know, pick a member of Congress.
Well, we interviewed Anna Salter many years ago, and she said something like 1 in 4 girls in the US are sexually abused.
Yeah, by family members.
In the 90s. Old stats. Family members, that's part of a cultural shift. Culture shifts from the top down. It's the degree and extent and effect, of course, doesn't mean that the worst things are super widespread. The current Navy Secretary in the US, John Phelan, files show he flew on Epstein's plane several times. No other details about the extent of his actual involvement. No,
that's what you do.
Not on itself.
That's what you do, though.
But it is known from a fancy magazine spread. His wife was happy to invite the photographer for a New York flashy magazine into the home. They've nudes all over the house, including in their stepdaughter's bedroom. Nudes from porn stills and modern art. That's normal in his household. So it's that's not evidence of crime.
It's an evidence of abnormality.
He's an inveterate liberal, and they've been brought along to believe that that's okay, and to actually show it off.
This is the Secretary of the Navy you're talking about, right?
Yes, Phelan.
He's officially an art collector.
Okay. Previously,
doesn't necessarily account for his taste in art, which is a different issue. Yeah, that's the problem. It's just hard to know, because again, it's central to the whole thing, because the premise of the whole Epstein Files business is that for a lot of people, at least on social media, who are looking at it and stuff, and again, you have to be careful with social media and what people are saying on social media, whether they actually believe it or not. But the premise is that this is a major, massive scandal that exposes the rot at the heart of American/Western politics, and that it is with every new email I read, with every new X post I read, it just gets wider and wider, to the point, at this point, I'm like, it's a whole thing. Burn it all down. They're all in it. Every one of them. They're all, one way or another, they're all involved in it. If they're not actually directly involved in it, they all know about it and they're covering it up. So the whole lot of them need to go. I mean, they're either direct conspirators or they're accomplices or they're in somewhere or other party to it. So burn the whole thing down. It's rotten to the core. All of them.
I've thought that since the early 2000s myself, but yeah,
Yep.
I made my choice long ago.
Huh?
I think when I
realized pedophilia.
Well, it was part of it.
Huh?
It was definitely part of it. Just the smaller things that would come to light in middle class settings, never mind upper class. A whole town in France that was pimping out their own daughters and kids, and like, what the fuck? There's a whole town where that happens. Well, then I heard another one. I'm like, are they related? Jesus Christ!
But then you expand it out to,
and then you come across the Zandvoort CD file from the 90s, and they began a police investigation and realized the kids in the CSAM, the kiddie porn, were missing cases from France, Belgium, the Netherlands, Portugal, Spain. Again, it's networked. And last year, massive pedophile investigation in Germany. They were investigating 30,000 people in Germany and abroad. Germany had actually a government policy of putting foster kids with pedophiles for a number of years. There was a thing in France too in the 80s, some Freudian shit where they would correct the kids or something. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I mean, the culture is riven with it.
But then that extends beyond any political elites, and you extend that out to human nature.
Yes,
and burn that all down too.
So
well, it's burning itself. It's
no, but it's the extent.
I wouldn't encourage any burning.
No, but burn it down in your mind or whatever. The extent to which you perceive. My point here was, I'll just say it again. My point here is that people. It's the extent to which people believe that the whole system, and you just expanded it out to human nature, is completely rotten and corrupt, and therefore it's a complete disaster. It deserves to be burned down. That's what I'm saying. Burn it down. It deserves to be burned down. It deserves to go the way of the freaking dodo, right? That it's all set for extinction. It's all completely rotten. There's nothing redeeming about it. It's all evil. And that, the question is, to what extent is that true? And the only way you'd be able to come up with a conclusion as to what extent that's true would be with actual hard evidence. And you don't get any hard evidence. So then people are left to come to their own conclusions. But the problem is, very often that's not being stated. Like I said, people are reading into a lot of stuff that they see on the basis of this. There's a lot of confirmation bias going on, and they're drawing conclusions and stating them as kind of hard facts, as if this is what is actually happening, when that may well not be what is actually happening. Just saying, it's talking about being interested in what's actually true, what's actually happening, rather than your feels. So because as much as your feels can give you, in certain situations, give you a correct reading on a situation, it can also be skewed. But there you go. We're not going to get any information. So it's all just opinion and speculation. But ultimately, it's I suppose it's for each person. That's what I'm saying. It's for each person to draw a conclusion and then move on, because people will move on. Things will move on. Something will come along and replace it, and that opportunity for learning a lesson or drawing a conclusion, whatever it may be, whether it's right or wrong, or partly right or partly wrong, will have passed, and then you carry on. So that's the best we can do, I suppose. I mean, I think I've always been of the position that it's probably better to assume the worst, assume that it's more than you imagine it to be, or more than you can actually see it, more than you have evidence for.
Because at each successive stage or scandal, that trend is confirmatory. It's you don't go along and go, gosh, I really was a bit paranoid back then. Do you ever find yourself going, oh, my world has lightened. I found that a whole bunch of things here actually are much better than I thought. Do you ever find yourself in Peter Singer's position or Jordan Peterson's, where the world is actually objectively, well, materially, maybe we can make the case. I don't know, not anymore. Maybe pre-COVID, that people were doing better off than ever before.
Yeah, it's a kind of almost a philosophical question, but personally, in answer to that question, I would say yes, that I do actually have to correct myself now and again in terms of the extent of the negative perspective I have on things, on how things are. Because all you have to do is look at, you can go and search on Twitter, like people say it all the time. People say, I'm not looking at Twitter anymore because I come away feeling like the whole world is black and I should just burn it all down. It should just go all. It should be destroyed. It's horrible. There's no point in living anymore. Like this world is just is forsaken completely, utterly. There's no redeeming qualities in it at all. And that's not. You're not really able. That's not a productive way to face the future. You're not really going to be able to sustain that. So the question is, what is actually true and what is not actually true? What is an accurate perspective on how bad and evil and corrupt, etc. the whole thing is? Because this goes to the heart of the Epstein thing, which is presenting to people, at least those who are listening, it seems to be presenting to people a very negative, if they're that way inclined, a very negative perspective on the whole world, the power structures, the powers that be in the world.
Well, for me, it's negative. Just the West. We're talking about it. For me, it's roughly 1 billion people that have the most problematic, rotten structures. And that fits with, about fitting with an objective theory. Well, that fits with the Russian and Chinese perspective, whose commentary on this situation is like Lavrov. Yep, this reveals the pure Satanism at the heart of the West, or something like that. Quote this week, at least in Russian news, that wasn't translated into English. Now, I'm not such a purist that there's none of this shit happening abroad, whether just spontaneous barbarism or organized. But I think you could make the case that objectively this is the industriousness of it, the scale of it is Western, and it's the last stand of liberalism, which is probably not fair on the philosophy / ideology, because it's been polarized, subject to negative interpretation of what it may or may not have meant hundreds of years ago. Freedom of the individual, freedom of choice, etc. When you have a large, we don't know the extent of it, but a sizable body of people who as individuals are aberrant, born that way or made that way, and they become the curators and they rise to the top. Then the ideology becomes, it has to be thrown out. So rotten to the core, you do have to go post-liberal.
Yeah.
There's no saving liberalism in general here. The very metaphysic of it is that everything is based on contracts, relationships between individuals who are free and rational. Are they? We've seen.
Well, yeah, it's a fundamental aspect of liberalism where, for example, everyone is equal under the law. Now you see that in practical terms that's not always the case. Obviously somebody's got more powerful lawyers and money to burn on things, and they can get away with a lot more than somebody who doesn't. But when you have that as a fundamental idea, as what exists in the world, that everyone is equal, that all are equal, and it turns out that that's not actually true. I mean, people are not equal in terms of their IQ, in terms of their, in any facet that you want to kind of measure, people are not equal. But how do you then put the square peg through the round hole where some people are fundamentally aberrant who do not seem to have the ability to give a shit about other people, for example. And not only do they not give a shit about people, they actually crave power and control over those people who do. So what do? Because you can't just have a lovey-dovey liberalism when that is what's actually going on, when this is the case. So you do need to go, like, okay, that was a nice idea. We tried that. Turns out we were wrong. So how do we go beyond it?
You need some authoritarianism to keep the aberrant ones in check. And that's seen in Russia, for example. They expressly checked the march of LGBTQ plus trans ideology stuff. Right. They killed it in its cradle in 2014. Oh, Putin's passed an anti-gay law. No, it was specifically the targeting of minors. This stuff isn't going into the schools. That's all. And you saw the reaction to that. Like there was a kind of a parade of natural coloring that took place there in the West, you know. Oh, let's cast it as he's being anti-gay. And he's calling for the incarceration of gays. So, yeah. It's a horrible feedback loop. Whatever is objectively going on is a horrible feedback loop. If there's a lot of falsehood mixed with the truth that's in there somewhere, it's feeding back on itself, and you've got people who were voted Trump. They're saying they voted Trump twice, and now they're like just horrified on their backs, reeling from the revelation. In other words, not actually the revelation, but what they've bit from what they're hearing,
And they shouldn't be, because I don't think Trump is to the extent that they're, implicating Trump in it. I think they're wrong that Trump isn't implicated in it. And despite her outbursts the other day in Congress, Pam Bondi isn't necessarily involved in it, and neither are most of the rest of them. They all have some dirt on them, I suppose, but I don't think, for the most part, Trump's team and Trump himself are that way inclined. But the sad truth is, the thing that people need to recognize is that, or understand, I suppose, is that there is that kind of stuff going on, but there's nothing that Trump can do about it. Which is why Trump is saying, shut up about the Epstein Files, we got to move on. Look at the Dow. The Dow's at 550,000, right? So that's what's most important, because let's just get back to basics.
Yeah. You can understand, though, that when she's saying in the hearing, the Dow's gone to 50,000, how that looks.
Yeah.
Because it's just getting memed up the wazoo as, but it's just, oh my fucking God.
But it's the same. I mean, it's the same tone and
as
attitude as Trump himself.
She is being a good Trump team player there.
She's just saying what he's been saying.
Yeah.
Not that I like her very much, but
yeah. Speaking of liberalism's last stand, I put that in quotes. I don't know how true that is. There's a sharply different American turnout at the Munich Security Conference this year. This time last year, it was J.D. Vance, and there was caused a kerfuffle when he's like castigating the Euros for and he gave some examples. It was pretty good for their crackdown on free speech. I listened to Marco Rubio's speech. Totally different. It was like good cop to Vance's bad cop. And I think the Euros loved it, applauding, and we have a text excerpt here. This is I suppose he's Rubio's a handy one for Trump, because he can articulate much better than Trump can what he'd like to see happen. talking about, it's an interesting contrast with the Russians, because the Russians talk about the last 5 centuries coming to an end of European Western domination. But Rubio made the case for the band's going to make it. For 5 centuries, the West had been expanding, building vast empires, extending out across the globe. So he was bigging up US-EU joint heritage and all the great things we've done together. Together we can, quote, renew the greatest civilization in human history, blah, blah, blah. So he was expressly saying, he did expressly say, if we have to, the United States will go alone, but we'd rather do it with you. It calls for a new Western century. We in America have no interest in being polite and orderly caretakers of the West's managed decline, which he characterized the whole post-World War II era as managed decline. That's teleological. They're reading backwards. That's not how Americans, the wise men after World War II, conceived it as. Unless decolonization is breaking out everywhere. Let's do what we can to hold the fortress. They encouraged it. They encouraged decolonization. Yeah, break free from all the other empires, and then merge into our Pax Americana, and let's contain Russia and China because they're commies. So it's kind of confused. He's trying to. You can see what he wants to do. He wants to reinflate morale in a pan-Western Union, but just as it's fraying, not least because of Trump's antics about Greenland and Canada and. But I did hear others make comments when they were there, and it's interesting that European media might be hysterical about Trump saying this about Greenland or its neighbors, but they do understand that Trump is trying to consolidate a Western hemisphere. Macron was there. Again, it's confused. He was trying to big up and hurrah a case for European unity. We have to unite or we're screwed. That makes sense on the face of it. But then he's also, in his speech, calling for, twice he said it, deep precision strikes on Russia. And his reasoning is that we need to do that and have the European capability to do that without the Americans so that we can negotiate with Russia. We don't want to use them, but... with that, okay, so they're the saner parts of it. AOC was there as well. I think she did okay. I don't want to poo-poo too hard, but I love how this wasn't just NBC. I saw this phrase splashed out a few times. She hadn't even arrived in Munich yet. This is the kind of headline they're running with. AOC to offer a working class perspective on U.S. foreign policy at Munich summit. As speculation about her ambitions grows. Error. AOC will speak on a bigger stage about the rise of populism. So I wonder if they're preparing her for a run as presidente. In 08, maybe her.
Yeah, Marco Rubio. The only really significant thing that came out of it, I think, was obviously they were all just without the US there. It's just a bunch of EU heads kind of talking shop and saying the same thing they've been saying over the past 4 years, primarily focused on, let's help Ukraine, let's send more money to Ukraine, and let's fight Russia because Russia's evil and stuff, so it would have been just a really damp squib without the US there. And they're all, they would have been all talking as well about, the current relationship with the US and whether we're going to have to go it alone. And but I thought Marco Rubio's was really the only. I think it was the only speech that got a standing ovation, and he also got several rounds of applause at very particular points in his speech, which was primarily the two times when he talked about the EU and the US, or Europe in general and the US being intrinsically linked, and that America's the child of the US
of Europe,
of Europe, and that the future's going to be bright if we stick together, and basically it was hands across the ocean, and we're going to be friends. We want to remake the world. We want to make the world great again for Western civilization, but we want to do it with your help. And it struck me as it was a bit cynical in a certain sense, because obviously the US over the past number of years has done a lot under Biden, and also under Trump continued it, basically as done a lot to kind of bring the Europeans to heel, basically, to threaten them, to, like, they blew up Nord Stream. They kind of they helped a lot to hobble the European economy and stuff, and steal manufacturing and stuff from the European economy, to screw up the economy. So basically to put the European Union in a weakened position, and threaten over the past few months to ultimately, typical Trump style, threaten something and then don't do it, but threaten to leave them. Like we don't like you people anymore. You can do it on your own. We're gonna make America and the Western Hemisphere for America great, and you Europeans can all just wither up and die with your mass immigration and stuff. Screw you guys. And then Marco Rubio comes and says, "Well, no, look, but." So, Europe threatened, put in a weaker position than it has been in recent years, and then threatened, and then come in with the, oh, but hey, look, we can still do a deal. So it's basically very much Trump-like, in a certain sense. I'm going to put 5 million % tariffs on you, and then whenever you start quaking in your boots, you go, okay, listen, I won't put 5 million % tariffs on you. Put 1 million % tariffs, and we can do a deal. Okay, so let's be friends. So it's Trump's art of the bullshit deal, basically, which seems to work apparently. It's fairly basic, but at the same time, Europe isn't obviously completely defenseless in that respect, because over the past, since Trump and the Trump administration have been making those noises about ditching Europe and not being friends with Europe anymore, the Europeans have been, openly courting, I'm sure a lot more went on behind the scenes, but at least officially in statements they made officially, their response to that was, okay, well, if you America are if you're going to threaten to, like, take over one of our countries, Greenland, and if you're going to leave us in the lurch and not be friends anymore, then we'll just snuggle up to China, which is several European, prime ministers have made intimations in that respect. And obviously that's not good for America, right? Because like ultimately America doesn't want to be left completely on its own, right? It always was a bluff that they're going to diss Europe completely, but because that would just throw Europe into the West, into the Eurasian landmass kind of thing as a block, and America doesn't want that. But like I said, they did do a lot to kind of like weaken Europe economically over the past number of years, so that they could then pitch a deal to say, okay, do you want to be? We don't want Europe to be a vassal, although we have kind of to a large extent vassalized you over the past, over quite a long period of time, but in recent years for sure. And we don't want you to turn to China and Russia, so let's be friends, and let's remind each other of our shared cultural and genetic and whatever heritage, religious heritage, and let's all be friends again, and they're all very happy with that. So there's a wave of relief. I think even the guy that came on after Rubio talked and did a little short question and answer session, he said, I don't know if you heard Marco, the sigh of relief that swept across the room when you said those words about us having a shared destiny and all this kind of stuff. So, there's obviously a reality to that as well. But like I said, the Europeans, aren't defenseless, haven't been, in that respect. But and America would definitely be shooting itself in the foot if it were to do what Trump threatened to do. But again, that's just, like I said, that's just Trump's art of the deal business. That's threaten big, terrible, disastrous consequences and then not follow through on them. And of course, they'd like to attack Iran and get rid of Iran, I suppose. Regime change in Iran through some kind of American/Israeli military move, and they would definitely need they would like European help with that. They certainly wouldn't like Europe to be to be kind of stonewalling them or trying to thwart them in that respect, which, not that they could totally, but Europe could, in a certain sense, make it more difficult for the US to proceed with its new Middle East, the US-Israeli new Middle East plan. So, and yeah, that seems to be, that's going somewhere still. That's kind of like waiting for the other shoe to drop in terms of Iran. You've got an aircraft carrier that's about a couple of weeks or so out from, I think it's Gerald Ford or whatever, is a second aircraft carrier that dispatched from the Caribbean to the Middle East. It'll be maybe a couple of weeks or so before it's in place. And at that point, it's like either shit or get off the pot, It's like do something or don't. Like you've amassed this greatest armada that has ever been amassed by America in the history of American armadas. And what are you going to do? Just sail away? Well, yeah, you would sail away if you could claim that you had made this awesome deal and it was an actual deal where the Iranians had in one way or another capitulated to American, but more importantly, Israeli demands to basically neuter the entire country and have it just as a vassal of the West, of the US, Iranians probably unlikely to go with that, so it's hard to see how you're not going to have some. I love
how when just before the talks, the most recent talks in Oman happened, like in the lead up to that, there were the US was wanting the talks to be in Turkey. And Iran was like, no, let's have it in Oman. And then the US said, either we do this in Turkey or we don't do it at all.
Yeah.
And the Iranians said,
all right, don't do it at all then.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine by us.
Yeah. And now it's in Oman.
And then it was in Oman.
Yeah, yeah.
So who really wants the deal more?
Exactly, yeah, of course. This is all part of, they're trying to make a deal with Iran. And it's all about China. Like that's the whole tenor of Marco Rubio's speech at the Munich Security Conference was all about. He didn't make reference to it explicitly, but what he's talking about is that the West, the US-led Western Hemisphere or international order, whatever, is under threat and is in decline because of a surging China and Russia and kind of Eurasian integration with their developments and their networking and their connections being made across Eurasia and into the global south, as they call it, basically Africa, let's say, and Southeast Asia. And that's a big threat to America, America risks being pushed aside, so while he didn't name them explicitly, he's obviously talking about Russia and China as a threat to it. And so, my loyalties are kind of divided. I could kind of agree with him in a certain sense, but it would only be the case. I would only subscribe to Marco Rubio's vision of the future of the 21st century, let's say, under American stewardship, if you could make sure that it was actually an honorable and noble and respectable, let's say, global order, that didn't mirror the one beforehand, that
wasn't run by a bunch of child-eating pedophiles?
And wasn't run by a bunch of child-eating pedophiles, whatever. They weren't behind the scenes, But
and that while you're giving this speech, you're not on the cusp of starving Cuba.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's all. Yeah, exactly. So there's two ways to look at it, basically. There's two perspectives on it. And one is, I suppose it's really a choice between the American-led international order continuing resurging and continuing and gaining more power and being able to kind of keep its thumb on China and Russia, and to some extent bring them to heel so that they play second fiddle in a certain sense. Or you throw your lot in with the multipolar world as envisioned by Russia and China, and
well, somehow it doesn't seem it may not be either or in practice, he's flying on to 2 countries before he goes back to the States. Small. Europe, when you think of Europe, you think of France, Germany, Italy, the UK. The UK is not in Europe, but whatever. It may as well be. But he's not. He's flying to Slovakia and Hungary.
Uh-huh.
So they're the most MAGA-like, or the most associated with being like, yeah, Trump, awesome. Orban was recently in the US, and Trump actually said the quiet part out loud, where he said, yeah, in their case, it's cool. You can trade with Russia for oil. You need it. You're landlocked, So Orban has a way around it. But the other thing it's not just their proximity culturally and energy-wise, their energy dependence on Russia. They're the most exposed, if you're looking at it from a negative point of view, countries to Chinese foreign direct investment per capita of all of Europe. Hungary went massive with Chinese deals. And you can never to America, to Trump, that's just reality, real politics.
What made sense, yeah.
Real politics.
Made economic sense.
I can imagine your permanent bureaucrat, dyed-in-the-wool, liberal, never Trumper would be seething at that and trying to undermine either government in Slovakia or Hungary. But Rubio, I doubt he's flying there to issue demands or threats. I'm not sure what the stated purpose for the visits are, but I can't imagine he's going saying, you better rein it in there, we're pro-West. You can't be.
No, it wouldn't be threatening. But their whole thing is that the problem, his idea of the collapse of Western industry is a major thing he's talking about. Basically, is because China became the manufacturing house for the entire world, right? So it's Trump's whole, at least on paper, is his whole. Is it the thrust? His whole line of force basically is to bring manufacturing back to primarily America, first and foremost to America, right? In that way, supplanting China. So it would be like, I'd say, going to those countries which are open to, more amenable to the US, whatever, in Europe, at least now, would be to talk about refocusing on American goods rather than Chinese goods. That's this whole thing. He has to do that. That's the only thing. I mean, if China's a problem because China has turned itself into the manufacturing house for the entire world to a large extent, then and that's a problem for the West. That's a major part of the decline of the West. Well, the only way to undo that is to start manufacturing yourself and take some of that manufacturing, that productivity away from China. And of course, it's not all just straight up deals, obviously, because a big part of the reason why they're going after Iran is to try and throttle China's access to the energy sources that it needs to fuel its economy. So if China was to suddenly go kind of bankrupt overnight, in a certain sense, not bankrupt, but say it was to have a major decline in manufacturing capability overnight, then somebody's going to have to take up the slack, right? And America's poising itself to take up that slack, and it's probably offering a deal to Europe. That's Rubio talking to Europe. Look, you need to get on this as well. You need to be on the same agenda as us, which is basically reinvigorating European and American manufacturing in the face of China basically trying to take over the entire world by producing everything that everybody needs, and all we end up doing is being buyers, buyers of Chinese stuff. So they tagging China for that, trying to undermine China's manufacturing by supplanting it with Western manufacturing, and undermine European in particular and any other countries' reliance on Russian energy sources, because between the two of them, they have a good gig going, right? One's a big manufacturer, one's a big energy supplier. They're a pretty bad threat. Trump wants to get as much of that back for the West as possible, as much manufacturing back to the West, and as much being the supplier of energy as much as possible, hence Venezuela, why you take over Venezuela, and then you sell it to whoever you want. So there's a lot of hard there's a lot of tough dealing going on in a certain sense, you know what I mean? And that, where it's not just about, okay, I've got this, what have you got? Okay, let's work something out. No, it's like, I'm going to take the stuff that you had and I'm going to keep it for myself, and now you're screwed because you don't have the stuff that you had before because I stole it from you, basically, like as in Venezuela. And in Iran, we're going to throttle Iran, or we're going to change the regime in Iran, and then the new regime in Iran is going to be more favorable towards the West, and we're going to be able to control it so that it'll at least be able to put pressure on China in terms of how much it supplies to China, etc., etc. That's his idea anyway. I mean, there's no other way to go about it. If your premise is the West is and America is going down the tubes and it's slated in the future, if we look on a crystal ball, it's going down the tubes if we let this thing go on any further. And the reason for it is China and Russia. China's manufacturing because of its access to energy, and Russia because it produces energy. Well, then let's target both of them, you know. And you don't just target them just by saying, like I said, it's not a fair deal, like, you know. I mean, Iran is a perfect example, you know. We're gonna make a really good deal with Iran. What kind of good deal? How good is your deal that you're making with another? Well, a client or I don't know, someone else you're making with another. You want to make a deal with another person, so you effectively, to that deal, when you're going to sit down and make the deal and you're going to work it out and it's going to be mutually beneficial and everybody's going to love it, you bring a gun and point it at their head.
And you say,
what kind of a deal is that?
And not just that, but it's like you go into the deal making process knowing exactly the things that they are not going to accept, the things that they do not want to give up,
and you demand that.
And that's what you demand. You say, I want those things. You know, those things you said you would never give up and that you would die before you gave up. You're going to have to give those up.
Yeah. Because we don't believe you. You're just saying that.
You're just saying that. And by the way, here's a gun.
Yeah.
And I'm pointing it at you.
Yeah.
And I want you to give up the things that you said you would rather die than give up.
Let's have a nice fair deal.
Now let's have a deal.
Yeah, let's have a nice equitable deal that's mutually beneficial. It's all above board. It's obvious that we have stuff you want, you have stuff we want. Let's make a nice deal. Here's my terms and here's a gun. What do you say? So obviously that's a major part of it. This isn't just some kind of a, like, you know, kumbaya, let's all get together and trade and share things together. And, oh, what have you got, China? And what have I got? Oh, I'll give you this. And oh, that's so nice. And then Russia, you can give this. Oh, it's so wonderful. Let's have a fucking campfire song and, you know, toast some marshmallows. It's all great. It's obviously not that, even though Trump kind of tries to present it in that way sometimes. Yeah. Obviously, Trump is very much focused on using American military power and any other influence it has, economic power, to put other countries in their place. And that's why I think Rubio's speech at Munich was a bit cynical in a certain sense, where he's all like, oh, we have so much share many things, and we're the child of Europe and we love you. We had a few disagreements recently, but, you know, we can work those out because we're really the same people at the end and all this kind of stuff. And
he even said, I know Trump can be a bit direct.
Yeah.
But
yeah. And this is after they have, you know, sought in several different ways to screw over Europe and put it in a weakened position so that then they can come with this kind of like, oh, let's be friends. I.e., you're going to do what we want, aren't you? So yeah, it's not very nice, despite what he said. And the fact that the Europeans just go, oh, they're just, I can understand it. You know, the Chinese are Chinese, they're not Europeans. And that's why Rubio appealed to a shared cultural and religious values. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because the alternative is that Europe goes to China, and it's like, do you really want to go with those Chinese people? You know, you all aren't Chinese, right? You know, like Da Vinci and like William Shakespeare and stuff. They weren't Chinese. That's our shared cultural heritage. A lot of the names of places in Europe are currently the names of places in America.
At which
no places in America are called Ching Chong or Shuang Shuang or Shring Fong. Have you noticed that? There are no towns with those names. So, like, you don't really want to be going. No, sure. You really don't want to be going that direction, do you?
If Joe
and all the Europeans were like, oh, yes,
they loved it.
I understand, because they feel the same thing, because it's really pretty crass, you know, appeal to. Although you can call it crass, maybe it's not crass, but it's something very real. It's ethnic ethnic identity, basically, your ethnicity and your genetics. And that's what was being appealed to. And it works.
Yeah.
As far as it goes. But it doesn't talk, because money talks when it comes down to it. So whether or not America has the wherewithal to actually make good on its grand plan and its glorious future for the Western order remains to be seen.
I think it'll all work out in the end, but not the way Trump expects. We're heading for another Bretton Woods, because at the end of World War II, that was the Bretton Woods that created the Bretton Woods system.
Mm-hmm.
If we're in a situation that's analogous to, because that's what they called, at least they call COVID that, but certainly the Russian-Ukrainian war, then this is going to have to be resolved at the root. Bretton Woods set up a global financial system, but at the very last minute, Keynes, the British economist, John Maynard Keynes' core idea was switched out in favor of the dollar. His idea was, and the conspiracy theorists misunderstand this, a one world currency, but not one that we use. It's one that's used for settling trade. It only travels between central banks. It's called Bancor. That's the term the term he came up with. And they were all agreed on until the last. And the American delegation said, no, it's going to be the dollar. That ended up fucking them over. That's the situation we're in now. What Trump's trying to do is to do what that system was supposed to do, was to balance trade imbalances and create a global surplus recycling mechanism. Varoufakis talked about this, and recently Philip Pilkington as well. They both agreed. It's amazing. They're both from totally opposite ends of the spectrum, and they homed in on the same problem with the same basic solution. What Trump's trying to do with a gun is force everyone to bring their trade imbalances with the US into balance. Eventually this will we can't fight our way into that situation. It's going to have to happen. I think the crisis will likely be that there is going to be a continued hit on the dollar. Everyone's going to feel it. And then ideally before it goes kaflooey, there's a major international conference. And how would that work in practice? Basically, if in the bilateral situation between, say, US and EU, where there's imbalances, the onus is on the other country to bring it up to balance, export more or less, manufacture more or less in this and that area until you have roughly parity, and so on and so forth. So it happens on a bilateral basis, and it's enforceable. You can't have a world army to actually enforce it, but everyone agrees that it's enforceable legally, and it's settled by this central bank currency, Bancor. I think that original idea in Bretton Woods has to be fixed. And I think because that's what Trump's trying to do. But he's so inarticulate. He doesn't seem like someone's smart enough, but I think he is. He's trying to iron out trade imbalances. Besson said it best for him last year when he explained what they were meeting with the Chinese in Switzerland for. He said, we basically want you guys to consume more and us to produce more.
Well, that's his whole thing for the past year, like.
Yeah.
Trade imbalances. That's why he's tariffing everybody.
Yeah.
He keeps on, that's the one thing he said over and over again, they're screwing us, you know. We're banning all their stuff and they're not banning ours.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how it's not working though. I don't think.
No, because he keeps saying it's manipulative, but it's not manipulative. That's just the way things are. I mean, it's like, I don't know. It's like, I have money and I go to the supermarket and I buy stuff because the supermarket supplies it. And then I call a meeting with the supermarket manager and say, look, there's something not right here. You sell all this stuff to me, and
you're not buying any of my stuff.
You're not buying any of my stuff. And the supermarket manager like, oh, you don't make any. And I go, yeah. But I should be making stuff. The only reason I'm not making stuff is because you're making it all. So I'm going to start producing like apples and stuff, fruit and veg. I'm going to sell it. And then you're going to buy my fruit and veg. You pay me. And then we'll work it out and be much better that way. And supermarkets like Chinese are like, well, if you want, I mean, you can try, but like we're already there. We're already have a whole system set up and stuff. Why bother? You know. Our whole system in China is set up to work in that way. That's how our economy actually functions. So it would be kind of upsetting for us. It would be a bit of a problem for us to kind of have to retool that in any significant way. You know, that's just the way things have worked out. I mean, what's your problem with it? Just run with it. And it's not about jobs and all that kind of stuff to a certain extent, because China has been very fair in providing like raw materials and finished goods that Americans can repackage and sell in America and all that kind of stuff, sure, at a higher price and all that kind of stuff. The real problem behind all that that's never spoken about is that it implies an imbalance in power. It's not trade imbalance that Trump's so much worried about. It's about power imbalance. He sees it as a power imbalance because ultimately, using the analogy of me in the supermarket is ultimately in a stronger position than I am. Even though the supermarket may depend on me buying goods, I depend more on the supermarket agreeing to sell me goods, because otherwise I starve. The supermarket can, in theory, find other markets for its goods, but if it's the only market for me, I'm in trouble. I have my money, but I can't. They won't agree to sell to me. Which is why, America needs alliances as well, because the only way I could do that with a supermarket here would be to get all the people in the town to all agree to increase our power against the supermarket and say, look, now I have a team of all of your customers that you rely on to buy your goods, and we're going to be in a position to negotiate with you more effectively, because it's not just one person, it's all of us together. And if we all go head to head with you and, do a kind of Mexican standoff, then everybody's going to fail, right? I mean, nobody's going to be happy about it. We're not going to be able to buy the food, and you're not going to be able to survive because all your food will rotten and you won't have anywhere to sell it, and then you'll go bankrupt as well. So, let's work something out. It's ultimately about a power thing, and influence. Because along with that that kind of economic power, if someone has more economic power over you than you have over them, then that economic power translates into political power and power in all sorts of other ways, and you can eventually you can find yourself in a bad position. You know what I mean? And it's normal that Trump is doing this, and it's totally understandable why he's doing it and all that kind of stuff. But my question is whether or not it's possible, because I think the world has already developed in such a way that that's the way it is, and everybody's taking their positions, and if you don't like it, well, it's a bit too late to upend the apple cart right now. You know what I mean? This is the way it works, and you can do a bit to try and change things a little bit, but ultimately you're not going to change the whole global system fundamentally. And Trump's like, hold my beer, I've got 7 aircraft carriers, and that'll change the whole world system. And it's like, that's probably not going to work either, because we also have,
missiles,
military power and stuff, and you don't want to go down that route. But that just becomes another kind of game of chicken in a certain sense. The same as like, we're not going to sell you stuff, we're not going to buy you stuff. Well, everybody's going to die then. Well, so be it. I don't mind. I've thrown the fucking wheel out the window. I'm not moving. I'm going to die on this hill. And the other one's going, well, I'm going to die on it. Well, let's all die then. And it's like, okay, look, let's just talk about this. That's Trump. Literally, that's a summation of Trump's first year in his economic policy. Over and over and over again, which is fine, because you never know how crazy some people are. You know what I mean? Maybe when someone says, "I don't give a shit, I'll die," I'll die on this hill. It's like, well, maybe he's crazy enough that he will, or
in which case, then it's my hill, and I win.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to update that expression, the Mexican standoff. By the end of this year, it'll be the Iranian standoff.
Yeah,
because this is driving me nuts. Do it already.
Yeah, it's going to take a while.
Reuters says U.S. preparing for weeks-long war.
Well, yeah, of course they are.
Weeks is optimistic.
The last one was days, right?
Yeah, it's not going to be. It's going to be a war of attrition. I think they've already decided on it, really. They know there's not going to be an Iranian deal or whatever, and it's just they're going through no, not boots on the ground.
No. By attrition, I thought of like a grind, but contained to a geographic region.
You shoot one missile, I shoot some missiles. You shoot another missile, I shoot another missile. Then eventually, see if we can get to an agreement that way. But no, at that point, it's not agreement. It's like they're trying to get rid of either. Well, in theory, they would think that they can try. The Iranian government would be like, okay, we give up. That's too much. We'll do whatever you want, and now we'll sign your dodgy deal. Or they'll get rid of. They'll blow up the Ayatollah and IRGC and all the rest of them, and regime change it in somewhere or other. They probably have various different plans, and who knows what the fuck Israel will be up to. But. And then at the end of that, it's like, let's make it. Trump probably has the idea that, at the end of some kind of exchange like that, let's make a deal now. Are you in more of a mood to make a deal?
There was
what are the actual details of the deal that he wants to make is the question, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's basically, like, what did he do recently? They supposedly got stopped China. Well, China's, it's all very involved, it's all interlinked. The whole Venezuela thing. Like Venezuela was selling something like 600 million barrels, 6 million barrels a day or something like that. Or I can't remember the exact number. A bunch of Venezuelan oil was going to China. China was buying it. The Americans have cut that off now, and there's a deal in the works that amount that China was buying, India will now buy it, and thereby stop buying that equivalent amount from Russia. So,
and then India will repackage it and sell it to China.
Yeah, but then you win. At least you win because you've cut Russian oil supplies.
Okay.
Either way, you win. At least you can win half. You can win whole. But India may well repackage it and sell it to China. But again, that implies that the benefit of that is you have control over it, right? In a certain sense, you can switch off the taps. They want control over the taps, and then you have. Ultimately, I think that's what the Iranian business is about. It's about, like I said before, it's about oil supplies. Ultimately, it's about control over the global oil supplies, as much of the global oil supplies as possible. That's the central pillar of his agenda for making America great again and renewing the West under the American global order is energy supplies. It wasn't very hard to come down to the conclusion that, the whole thing operates, the wheels are all greased by oil and gas, so control as much of that as possible and you get to at least have a chance of getting your way.
So you're saying there's a chance the band's going to make it?
Band's going to make it, boys.
The West, the new Western century.
Probably not.
But maybe.
Not. Probably not.
Will they get points for trying?
Misadventure. Death by misadventure. Anyway, better leave it there. It's 6:30. A priest, a pastor, and a rabbit walk into a blood donation clinic.
And a rabbi?
No, a priest, a pastor, and a rabbit walk into a blood donation clinic. The nurse asks the rabbit, "What's your blood type?" The rabbit says, "I'm probably a type O."
That's why my brain corrected for it. Not bad.
Better quality compared to last week. So I think we'll leave it there. We'll waffle on for way too long. We hope you enjoyed the show. Thanks for watching, listening, reading. If you're reading it.
If you were reading
live. We'll be back next week with another show and whatever bullshit's been going on between now and then. So until then, stay
frosty.
Bye, all.
See you later.
Bye.
Can't stop the signal now.